People who prey on the weak, defenseless, the innocent, are persecuted for their crimes. Yet, despite their atrocities, we find ourselves fascinated by their actions. Their examples provide us a certain catharsis not easily satisfied by anything else. We are curious, morbidly so, even if the outcome is disturbing. We find uncertainty more unpleasant than unpleasant certainty. It is exactly that sentiment that Fritz Lang plays with in the movie that serves as our subject matter. This movie is known to us only by one letter, and yet it has the power to convey terror, suspense, fear, compassion, empathy, and absolute loathing. M, directed by Fritz Lang, is a masterpiece that deviated greatly from the more grandiose films he directed before, most notably Metropolis. It was gruelingly shot in only 6 weeks and released in 1931 amidst one of Germany's worst depressions on record, shortly before the banking collapse and the ensuing rise of Adolf Hitler and the Nazi regime to full power. We see Lang's disgust with what was happening in Germany. We feel the dirt on the streets and the stench in the air. It's interesting to note that we get a glimpse of the murderer early on, only 15 minutes and 55 seconds into the film. Hans Beckert, expertly portrayed by Peter Lorre, is an absolute monster with the face of a sweetheart, yet all the while unsettling, disturbing, and disturbed himself. While we are shown the face of the criminal that will terrorize this neighborhood, we don't see his crime. We are only given enough information to infer. Stephen King describes terror as fear induced solely by the imagination. All one must do is simply suggest the unknown, and our minds do the rest. As we see the young girl's ball bounce softly away, we immediately sense that the unspeakable has happened. Here, we get one of the first instances of a musical motif in film history. Lang gives us all the information we need because this isn't a whodunit. We are there with a desperate mother crying out her daughter's name down the endless flights of stairs of her hopes. We are the homeless man who heard the whistle. We are the men of the kangaroo court convened to sentence this criminal. All the while, we are on the edge of our seat, crying out in our mind, "He's right there. Catch him." We are surrounded by the tension, the smoke, the sweat, the fear. We are consumed with anger for the bumbling police force who can't seem to put things together, forgetting that they haven't seen what we have. Our first encounters with the police are unsavory. They try as best they can to pacify the people by arresting anyone with even a hint of suspicion. We see our villain taunt the police in public, writing directly to the press and vowing to continue their violent ways. The police need results, and we sense their desperation. That sense of unease and despair is only heightened by the lack of a score, though lacking, this film is not. It is filled with the sights and sounds of a real city as it struggles to come to grips with the idea of an unknown murder in their midst. With the follies of the police leading to increased scrutiny on the criminal organizations, we are presented with an uncomfortable truth: the humanity of criminals when those defenseless are taken advantage of and hurt. Lang juxtaposes our establishment with the underground, but we see more similarities than differences in their portrayal. Most noticeably, the smoke clouds and passionate pleas to find this man and bring him to justice. What that justice entails is a matter for discussion all unto itself. Frustration from months of failure lead to both sides of this justice coin to employ almost Machiavellian tactics in their efforts to apprehend the beast lurking in their streets. Our patience and restraint are tested as we see the killer enter an almost trance-like state when gazing upon a victim that narrowly escapes. But the stage has been set for his fate to unfold. Lang sets this up beautifully. The crimes all happen off-screen, in the shadows, in the deepest and darkest recesses of our mind, where our thoughts are allowed to roam free to the most harrowing of corners. We are blind to the realities of Beckert's horrendous acts. His identity, though, is made evident by a blind man, living in constant darkness, but keen to the sounds of his surroundings. He hears this now familiar tune. And it is at this moment that the hunter has become the hunted. As Beckert feels the walls starting to cave in, he traps himself in a cage with no way out as the criminal network closes off all opportunities for escape. In a movie where we have seen so little of the main character and are merely given hints as to the extent of his evil, we are treated to an almost unbearably long capture that allows the suspense and anxiety to build until it reaches a crescendo when the spotlight shines on the frightened face of Hans Beckert, a wolf in sheep's clothing. When is it okay to take matters into your own hands? When you see the ineptitude of those in positions of power, those charged with ensuring your safety, fail time and time again, do they then abdicate responsibility? Should justice rely on only a select few? Fritz Lang highlights this issue, and we have seen real-life examples as well. Ken Rex McElroy terrorized the people of Skidmore, Missouri for years. He had felony charges for assault, rape, arson, burglary, and the list continues. Yet, for the most part, he escaped prosecution and conviction. This town reached its breaking point when McElroy avoided jail time on an appeal bond after being convicted of second-degree assault. The curtains were drawn, the actors were in their positions, and as Ken Rex McElroy started his pickup truck, the deafening sounds of shots pierced the silence. When the smoke lifted, there he lay in a pool of blood. The audience in town, however, have remained silent on who their heroes were ever since. At an abandoned distillery, we see the beginning of Hans's trial put together by the mob. Awaiting him are his accusers, a jury, a witness, and even a lawyer for Hans's defense. Hans flinches upon seeing the photos of his past victims and tries to flee. After his failed escape attempt, the question of justice begins. Hans screams that they have no right to treat him this way. They have no legal power to hold him or to try him. The prosecutor assures him that he will receive a trial as written by the law. He will be faced by a jury of his peers and will even have a lawyer for his defense. However, the crowd have already convicted and sentenced him. This kangaroo court can recall the purges that occurred under dictatorships such as Stalin's Russia, where his great purges eliminated all of those he considered enemies of the people. Many confessed to the crimes that they were accused of and convicted to the letter of the law. However, the majority of those convicted were tortured and threatened until they confessed to the crimes charged against them. The Nazis, who found scapegoats for all the nation's problems and decided to bring those people to justice. However, there is one key difference between Hans's trial and those we mentioned. We know that Hans is guilty of committing one of the worst crimes, the murder of a child. If the criminals were truly interested in justice, why are they not on trial with Hans? He states they have no excuse for the crimes they commit and probably even boast about them. So who are they to judge him? Additionally, we see that their motives in stopping the murders is not entirely goodwill. Their call to action came after the police began cracking down on these criminal organizations. Had the police not disrupted their illegal activities, would they have even cared to find this murderer? He then gives what we would consider an insanity defense.
Wer weiß denn, wie sie mir aussieht, wie es schreit und brüllt da innen, wie ich tun muss, will nicht, muss, will nicht, muss. Und dann schreit eine Stimme und ich kann es nicht mehr hören. Hilfe! Ich kann nicht! Ich kann nicht! Ich kann nicht!
Finally, this leads to one of the greatest questions and arguments on justice: accountability. Many nations, including Germany, recognize the insanity defense. According to one source, to qualify for this defense, first, an insane defendant does not have control over his or her conduct. Second, an insane defendant does not have the ability to form criminal intent. Without the ability to control conduct, or the understanding that conduct is evil or wrong by society standards, an insane defendant presumably will commit crimes again and again. Thus, no deterrent effect is served by punishment, and treatment for the mental defect is the appropriate remedy. Treatment rather than punishment is what the criminals disagree with. After Hans demands to be brought before a real court, they respond.
Was geschieht, wenn ausbricht aus dem Irrenhaus?
Ja, oder geheilt entlassen wird? Und eines schönen Tages fängt das Morden müssen wieder von vorne an? Wieder monatelange Hetzjagd. Wieder Paragraph 51, wieder Irrenhaus. Wieder ausbrechen oder entlassen werden. Und wieder morden müssen. Und das geht ja nicht in alle Ewigkeit so weiter?
This question has been spotlighted in other media, such as Batman and the Joker. The Joker is a psychopath who has killed hundreds of innocent people, from other criminals to children. Many, both in the comics and in real life, believe that he should be killed. However, due to his very clear insanity, he spends his time at Arkham Asylum, where he escapes multiple times, goes on another killing spree until he is captured, and this cycle begins again. In the end, we are left without resolution, without finality, without satisfaction. His punishment is handled much like his crimes, off-screen, in the shadows, left only for our minds to piece together. Whether Hans is killed, held in an asylum, or pardoned, it will not change anything for these grieving parents. Their emotions are perfectly encapsulated in these few words.
Werden unsere Kinder auch nicht wieder lebendig.
Thank you for watching. Have you seen this movie? Let us know your thoughts in the comments section below. If you want to see more videos like this, subscribe and hit the notification bell. To stay up to date on all of our content, check out the links in the description.